Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Kisma, and today's episode is all about meditation. So you think you can meditate. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Hello, Nick.
Hello, Kisma.
Well, I guess this episode is about meditation. It's actually more about a question that I asked when I was at the Vedanta Academy in India, kind of got blasted for and got me thinking. And I should reference that this is episode 3 in our series regarding my trip to India.
Yep.
But yeah, so before we get started, how's your week going?
The week's going well. A lot of organization happening.
Organization is good. Great order, man.
Yeah. My brain is fighting it a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was wanting to be off and doing other things. And there are just some things that need to be organized. And
yeah.
So
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And sometimes we've got to give it a little break and a rest and step away and enjoy life.
Yeah. Like make it fun.
Yeah.
You know,
somehow in some way,
Yeah.
shape or form, make it fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Mystic Next Door has been doing his thing.
I find the Mystic Next Door on Instagram, everyone. He's quite entertaining.
He is an entertaining character. Yeah. I very much enjoy him.
I do too. Sort of like your alter ego.
He is. Yeah. It's funny that I was listening to another podcast actually. And the guy who wrote that book, Alter Ego, Todd Herman. Yeah. Good guy. And I was like, oh, I know this one, you know, the alter ego effect and how that works and everything. And then that the Mystic Next Door just kind of landed.
Right.
You know, and he's been a lot of fun to play with.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, for today's topic.
So you think you can meditate?
So
is it like
meditate
revolution?
It's not. I mean, let's put in perspective. Meditation is so big in this country. You know, you get the app, it's the Calm, it's the Breathe, it's the this, it's the that. You know, athletes are meditating, presidents are meditating, CEOs are meditating. It's not a bad thing. If we can sit quietly and breathe and slow down our thoughts, this is beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
What we're here to shine a little bit of light on is what the real meditation from the highest teachings of the land is all about. And I can't even go there to the highest degree, but I'll just share in a way to help put things in perspective. And the first piece of that is, I think the biggest myth is that meditation is a practice.
That is how I most often hear it referred to.
Just like yoga, it's a practice. It's a practice. Actually not.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a practice, everyone. It's an arrival. Because in the truest sense of meditation, where we are quieting the mind to a point where we're focused on a mantra, usually Om, and then we're focused on the silence, and then we're focused on the mantra, it takes a very special mind to be able to hold what is referred to as the intellect steady, to focus on these two. Because it's just that we'll be doing, and then another thought floats in.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, there's a whole strain of thoughts related to that other thought. So we could be focusing on green juice, like that could be the mantra. But when we focus on green juice, we might start thinking lunch or orange juice, or I want a pizza. And before you know it, the mind has wandered. Mm. So it's really about the skill and the intellect being developed to hold the mind steady.
Yeah.
This is in the absolute teaching. So an agitated mind will not be a meditative mind.
Okay. But the part that I'm not, I mean, I'm clear in myself on, but I'm not sure the listeners are 100% clear. Is like, why is that not a practice? If I just practice that, then I'll get good at it.
Got it. The real practice is letting go of desires, because it's the desires that show up, and desires aren't bad, but it's the desires that show up that take our thoughts off into green juice, lunch, pizza, etc. So the practice is dropping desires, creating higher desires, and having the mind more quiet. Then you can arrive into meditation. It's interesting, right?
It is.
So I get it. I mean, all intensive purposes. And even, as we reference again, the Vedanta treatise, he does lay out this chapter 14 on meditation. He tells you how to sit. He talks about the mala beads, etc. It looks and sounds like a practice, but it's an arrival.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do at the academy, they do 5 minutes. 5 minutes of meditation
a day.
Like that's it.
So here's the funny thing. Here's why the bit of a story I wanted to share with our listeners. And the reason we wanted to talk about this today is we do something called bhajans that happen every day at 5:45, and they're singing, right? They're singing in Sanskrit. I just let go and like daydream or be like, that's so cool. And so like get blissed out. And then whoever is singing takes us into, it's not even 5 minutes, maybe it's 3-4 minute meditation on Om. And so given that the teachings are your mind is not ready to meditate, I'm like, then why are we meditating? And one of the students said, to show us that we can't. And I was like, yeah, you're right. My mind keeps wandering.
That's a good reason.
Now, is it a bad thing? No, because you're really sitting, you're breathing, you're doing everything to bring that intellect and hold the space on the Om and the silence. So in essence, it feels like a practice to do it every single day like that. The beautiful thing though, is as they're setting up this quote unquote meditation, the person will say, pay attention to the silence between the Om, because there is where your true self lies. And I just love that saying. It's like, there's where your true self lies. It's just like, oh, it's there somewhere. I got to pay attention. It's there. It's like, I love that. So when we were in small group discussion, I brought this question up. Typical me, is there anywhere else where we can see the true self? Like, I'm just like, in the whole idea, the question was, is someone surfing and they're in such a meditative state that they see their true self? Can we just get to a point, or does one individual get so enlightened that just as they're walking and they look at a tree and they see their true self, right? Like, I'm just like, Brahman is everywhere and whatever. So the students put really beautiful answers together, and they were very consistent. This is the process we go through. This is a documented system for self-realization, the Vedanta teachings. So we don't know if there's another way, but through the practice of dropping desires, studying, developing the intellect, and then arriving in meditation is where you find the self. I'm like, okay, fair enough. And so then, as per the academy, questions are taken to big group discussion where Swamiji, the guru, comes in. And if you're a visitor, they usually bring up your questions so he can address it. And he's just like, no.
Did he throw a rubber ball at you?
I did not get a rubber ball, but and he calls me Donna, my birth name, which is just fun. He's like, only you would try to go back to America and try and figure out another way to get self-realized. It was so funny. And I was like, yeah, I shouldn't have asked that question. Damn. But you know what? It then just brought him to a beautiful teaching where he's like, I don't know how he got off into this point, but he's like, there's splashes of divinity everywhere. And just to hear him say there's splashes of divinity everywhere, you're like, oh yeah, there's divinity everywhere. So the self is everywhere. Brahman is everywhere. But if we really want to find it, if we really want to connect with it, we've got to quiet our mind.
Right.
And that our world as we know it now is the opposite of that. There's so much noise. There's so many thoughts just infiltrating our headspace, our mental real estate, our emotional real estate, that if we could take this very lofty teaching and bring it down to the practical, it would be to slow down, to really just slow down and allow some space in between every thought. And I was like, that's worthwhile trying. That's certainly going to calm down my head. It's certainly going to help me to be more present. And just this idea that there's a splash of divinity everywhere, it just totally geeks me out.
Yeah. Well, he talks in that poem, The Daffodils.
Yeah.
Is that Wordsworth, I think?
I think it's Wordsworth.
Where, the guy just goes into raptures of bliss at the fields of daffodils.
Yeah.
seeing that divinity. And it reminds me of that. I think we talked about this in another episode at the end of The Last Samurai.
Yeah.
Where the samurai is sitting there and he's dying and he's looking at, spoiler alert, everybody, but it's an old movie. He's looking at all the blossoms and he's like, it's all perfect. It's like that was his moment.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that's, it's kind of interesting though, that's the time, like people wait until later in their life to be like, all right, I'm going to slow down now.
Yeah.
I'm going to slow down and I'm going to try and like, now I'm going to have some time to devote to, my spiritual practice or to trying to figure out what the heck this is all about or whatever, that people are like, they keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I think the thing that people don't recognize is the damage that you're doing along the way. So it is not uncommon at all to see as people age, they become more fearful.
For sure.
And more, and they have more anxiety,
right.
Whether it's a physical thing, or an illness that really shook them, or they're feeling insecure because that hasn't happened and it's happened to all of their friends, or they're, you're seeing now, people that are passing on. It's like all these little things, like they add all these anxieties and the effort hasn't really been made to fortify the mind against that.
Yeah. Right.
And so then it builds up, but there's no tools or practice in place to really keep that at bay.
Right.
And I think like if anybody listening to this episode takes away anything, it's like, do that now.
Yeah. Don't wait.
Do it
now. Stay in your action. You don't have to slow down in what you want to do, but slow down the thoughts.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of people confuse that as well. It's like, okay, I need to slow down. Right. And maybe, but not your external actions, like slow down inside.
Yes, slow down the mental presence so that you are aware and present.
Right.
Slow down that thought flow so that you have an opportunity, if you listen to our last episode, to know what's an illusion and what isn't, what's real, what's Maya. Like that slowing down gives just a sense of presence and of soaking up life and of making wise decisions and choices.
Yeah. So, that's an interesting one. I know my own experiences of this, but I want to ask you, when you're searching for an answer, when you need to know something, or just need some guidance or something like that, does it happen when your mind is like really busy and all wrapped up in a whole bunch of different things?
Of course not. No, doesn't.
But do you have a way, like if you were to give a tip to the listeners, like how do you kind of tap into that?
Well, it's great. I mean, let's, call it meditation in our formula. It's sit quietly, breathe. Of course, I do some of the energetics, clearing, etc. And I ask, I invoke help. If there isn't an answer, there's something in a way that would represent as a limiting belief or paradigm that is not serving me. So then I'll do whatever I do to clear that, get that out, and then go back in and ask. Resistance is really painful, everyone. So don't resist the answers. I think sometimes we get scared of the truth of, what's going to be said to us. The universe, God wants the absolute best for us. We're here to evolve and have the best. So be brave enough to hear the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, okay, somewhere in there in the silence is your true self.
Exactly.
I love that. Like, I love the idea of that. And for me, it's like, all right, even if I can't see my true self, my true nature, I know that there's guidance in that space if I just slow down and take it.
Exactly. Exactly. So a tip for you all is to get up 15 minutes earlier. Get up 15 minutes earlier than you do.
What do you have, an extra cup of coffee? What do you do with that time?
No, you're going to sit. You're going to sit comfortably, close your eyes, and just focus on being present. And, if you're used to quote unquote meditating, or maybe you do my meditation pod, which is always a good grab because it's a guided meditation that has clearings. And I'll give you the link to that in a minute.
Yeah, I want to talk about those more.
But I mean, if you're willing to sit and you're willing to notice your body, notice your breath, and then take the awareness up to your thoughts, and perhaps out loud, you just say an Om and then another Om, and you can bring some sense of awareness to the place between the Oms, you're just going to feel more spacious. You don't have to do it for a long time. It's just be with that kind of presence and slow it down. And for those of you that do it, great. Do it a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you need to do 108 ohms. No. You can do 3.
You can do 108 ohms, but you can do 3 and be like, wow, okay. Somewhere in that silence is my true self.
And another layer of that I think is super cool is that the ohm itself has a cleansing property.
It does. It's a frequency that does cleanse.
Yeah. So, it's a great way to actually just clean up a little bit of energy.
Right.
Chanting the ohm a few times. Now, speaking of the meditation pod and your approach to meditations in that specific I think it's important to differentiate the context.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that,
let's do that.
When we look at it from the Vedanta teachings, like meditation is an arrival, right? Yes. And anything else is just like, okay, well, you're trying to do that. And that's kind of the problem, right? But it's not what, it's not what you think it is necessarily. Right. It's a much more narrow definition of what meditation is. And when I look at it, like, to me, that's really accurate because it's just the mind gets pulled in so many different directions. And if you don't clean up what's happening in the mind and in the energy, you have no hope.
Right.
You can practice it all day long, but you're still going to be out there running and just creating more desires and creating more conflicts and creating more whatever you're creating in your world that is going to be taking you away from the place that you're actually saying that you're trying to get. It's kind of like going to church, 1 hour a week and thinking like, oh, I'm all spiritual now.
Right.
Like, that's absurd.
Yeah.
You have all these other hours and all these other things that you're doing. If you're not bringing that into it, then you have a problem, like a real challenge. And it's kind of like that. Like, okay, well, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes a day. It's definitely a larger percentage, but there's a lot more of your day that's not being addressed.
Yes.
And that you just go back into the same old things and the same old patterns, and it keeps creating the same energy.
It's a karmic loop,
the
for
same
sure.
thoughts. Yeah, exactly. And so the bridge, like, that's how I kind of look at the pod is more like a bridge. And that's what I'm wondering if you can talk about is like, how does it help and aid to bridge the gap in a process like that?
You mean the meditation pod?
The meditation pod, yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, the meditation pod is my little, it's the greatest thing. It's $27. It's 5 meditations plus, I think, a bonus. They're guided. So basically I'm taking you through a stream of energy and frequency that allows you to heal and solve and resolve some things. And by doing so, you shift your frequency. So there's one on brain clarity, right?
Talk about that one.
The brain clarity. It's just getting all the gunk in your brain out of it.
Like a decluttering
kind of thing? It's just like, get the negative thoughts, get the worries up and out of your head so that you can actually put in the good stuff.
I think I need to do that.
I think you do, actually. And then there's one on healing. There's one on abundance. There's one on forgiveness. They're really good. So I figure, if people are seeking it, let's do it in a way that energetically is going to help and support.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, you can find those at kismaawake.com/meditation-pod. And we'll have that link in the show notes too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great because it's something that you can do every day, and you can just kind of pick one from the pod that's relevant for you.
They're downloadable. They're audios. You can have them forever.
Yeah. But the bridge is the piece. It's like what it does, what these processes do is they help you to just really to heal and solve and cleanse the energy and the thoughts that have been going on there. Not in like just like a push them out of the way kind of way of like, let me just like not think about that, for 10 minutes, which will feel good. But this is a much deeper way of actually getting those things out.
Right.
So that you have an opportunity to arrive at the meditation.
Exactly.
Right. To really actually have that space it's kind of like, it's like that metaphor that they use at the academy where you've got the pond and like the pond's got a bunch of scum and stuff on top of it. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you take your hands and you put them in the water and you spread your hands apart and you make a little opening there. And you can see like below that is like, there's clearer water. Right. And then you take your hands out and then it goes right back together.
Right. So you need something more consistent and sustainable.
Right. Well, something that I think just really helps to take you down the path. Like, cause otherwise you never clean the water.
Right.
You just keep putting your hands in and kind of taking it apart. And, maybe like you take out a little bit that sticks to your hand. And like, that's it.
Yeah.
And then the water will get dirtier. Like that's what will happen to your mind and your energy.
Right.
If it's not cleaned up, our world is not like it's toxic, but there's stuff. Like there's stuff like because you're a human being in the world, and it will gather in your energy, and then your mind will adopt it over time. Like that's just what happens. So if you're only ever just kind of like trying to find a moment of clarity and pushing things aside so that you can have that, you're not actually solving the problem.
Right.
And you're not really solving the obstacle that's keeping you from that sustainable and maintainable clarity that you really want.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. I'm kind of passionate about this topic.
I know. Yeah. Cleanse it out, insert what's good, and seek your true self.
Seek the true self.
I mean, that's just such a great thing to start every day. It's like, what's my true self? And to end every day is like, thank you, God, spirit, universe, whatever, show me my true self in all the ways of being, all the magnificent ways.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That brings me back to that great exercise we learned from Vernon Wolf, the full potential self.
Yeah. The full potential.
Yeah. I still use that.
You have a full potential. It's a great exercise.
It's such a great exercise. It's like so ridiculously simple. A 5-year-old can totally understand it. And it's also really powerful because like it just gives you the permission to come back to like, well, what is that? Like, who is that? What would that person look like and act like and talk like and think like? And even if you just connect with it for a few minutes, there's value in that because it carries through.
I love that. We'll have to do a full episode on that.
The full potential self. Yeah. That's super cool.
Take everyone through it.
It's so simple.
But it's really profound. So be aware of those simple things, everyone, just like seeking your true self.
Seek the true self.
Yeah.
Kids are bringing back the wisdom.
Yeah. So this is another time we're just going to remind you, if you can find your way onto iTunes to give us like a rating or a review, take a screenshot.
I had a little breakthrough.
Oh, what's the breakthrough?
The breakthrough is that it's super, I can't figure out how to do it on the mobile app.
Okay.
If you can, then definitely kudos to you.
Okay.
And let us know. It's done through iTunes.
Okay.
So when you search the podcast in iTunes, not in the podcast app, but in iTunes.
Oh, then you can
find it, and it's super, and it is actually pretty simple to just like click it.
That would be awesome.
You have to be logged into your account.
So do that, send a screenshot and send your address. We'll send you a little gift. Yeah, would love that.
That'd be so much fun. And share it. Like share it with a friend, if you've got somebody who's like really into, things, or maybe they're, maybe it's somebody who's kind of curious about these things. They're like, oh, maybe I should meditate. And they're like looking at all these different apps, like give them some context for what meditation is and help them to understand it in a broader way. And then they can find what's right for them.
Yeah. Because there is nothing more frustrating than someone who feels like they should be able to meditate and they can't.
Oh, man,
and then they get all judgy. It is the worst. So
well, you just feel like you're like, I suck at this. Like my mind is so busy.
Right.
And, and every meditation teacher in the world will say like, you're not bad at it. You just need to keep practicing.
You need to change some other things.
Yeah. There's definitely more to the story. And that's really our hope here, is that you get a little bit more of that story and a little bit better understanding of just like, well, what the heck are we trying to do here anyway, and why, and how it fits in the bigger picture.
For sure. Yeah. So thanks for being here, everyone. Much love to you, and see you next week.
Namaste.
Peace. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.